Welcome to the deep dive for this week. Don't forget to visit the website at deepdiveau.net. Check out our socials and Patreon page at the Deep Dive AU. Subscribe via your favourite podcast app or like and subscribe at our YouTube page at the Deep Dive AU.
The Deep Dive podcast mugs are now available for purchase and are currently on sale. Just go to our merchandise page at deepdiveau.net to purchase one. Don't miss out on this opportunity to grab one for yourself or as a thoughtful gift for a fellow podcast enthusiast.
This is the Deep Dive Podcast. And here is your host, Michael Coles.
Laetitia Andrac is the founder of Understanding Zoe, a platform transforming how parents understand and care for their neurodivergent children. A 5X founder, business strategist, and best-selling author with the experience of being neurodivergent, Laetitia is also the CEO of Essential Shift, helping leaders bridge intuition and strategy in their businesses. Laetitia Andrac, welcome to the Deep Dive.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, reflecting on your burnout experience 10 years ago, what were the initial signs that indicated you were approaching autistic burnout?
I didn't notice the early sign. I ended up being in my bed, not being able to move, and taking myself to the doctor when I was deep in the burnout. But as I reflected back on my journey, I think I could have noticed the early sign now that I know what was the early sign, and it was a higher sensitivity to sound and light, and having more and more migraine and wanting to be by myself more and more rather than being out in the world. So I didn't notice those, if that makes sense. I just pushed through, as we do, to fit in a world that was not necessarily designed for my own needs or designed for what I was thriving and looking for. So I just pushed through until I reached, the last level of burnout, which was really hard then to recover, because the deeper the deep, the struggle it is to come back up from it.
So how did your personal story lead to the realization of your own neurodivergence?
So I actually started learning about neurodivergency when Zoe, my daughter, was 2.5, and we were alerted by the daycare that her way of development, her needs were different to other kids, and we were encouraged to start and go and see a psychologist. And that's where we started seeing a holistic pediatrician and a neuroaffirming psychologist. And as we went down that journey, I started talking to my parents about my own childhood and about how I developed and all those kind of things. And this is when my parents told me that when I was younger, I was identified as hyperactive and hypersensitive. So it's called TDHA in French, which is ADHD in English. But my autism was highly masked. So it was only discovered later through Zoe's diagnosis and Zoe's approach. So my own lived experience was a way of feeling I was always different, but never really knowing why I was different, why I had such high and such low, why I had moments where I really wanted to be with a crowd, but then, moments where I really wanted to be in my cave in the dark and in silence. So it was really kind of a journey of self-discovery. And I think Zoe's journey, so Zoe was my 8-year-old daughter, accelerated this self-discovery journey, because when she was 2.5, I started diving deeper into reading The Whole Brain Child and reading a lot of book about neurodivergency, and starting to look out there around people that could help us in a way that was neuroaffirming, and rather than treating her own need as if it was a disease, which unfortunately I see a lot of people still approaching it, seeing it as a disability, which is very different.
So in what ways did recognizing your neurodivergence alter your perspective on your burnout experience?
I think where for a lot of people, burnout is very different. You have about 70% of the people who will face burnout at least once in their career when they are working professionals. So for me, it was a professional burnout. It was not a personal burnout. When you have, other type of burnout, you have personal burnout when you look after someone else, or when you are going through a family's situation and things like that. So for me, it was a professional burnout. And the way my neurodivergency affected my own burnout was the way way I recovered. So I couldn't just go on and do the same thing. I literally shifted my entire life. I moved from being a strategy consultant in Paris in a high-paced environment to moving 24 hours away from France to Australia and taking 6 months sabbatical, 6 months off, where I couldn't even really look at a laptop for quite some time. I couldn't even really see myself going back into an office space. I couldn't really go back to the way it was. It was a real reinvention of myself, but it came through as an autistic burnout years after when we went through the journey with Zoe.
Okay.
At the time, I didn't even know it was an autistic burnout.
So what specific challenges did you face as a neurodivergent individual that may have contributed to your burnout?
Oh my gosh, so many, Michael. And I'm sure a lot of people who are listening to this podcast, if you are neurodivergent, may feel it is just the workplace is designed for neurotypical. And it's just you have to fit in those workplaces. So let's start with the workspace, where you have to be in an open space. It's very loud. There is a lot of movement. And then you have those, neon light that are very annoying, and the sound around you, and you have to get in the office. So getting into the metro, getting into this, sensory loaded spaces. And so it's just like, I think it's really not designed for our need, but also working long hours and working in the timelines that is defined by other people rather than honoring your own needs. So there are so many things that needs to change in the workplace to make it more neuro-inclusive. And for neurodivergent with different needs, everyone is different in the neurodivergency umbrella. So I just want to speak for my own lived experience. I really want workplaces to be designed for us rather than us having to ask and advocate all the time for accommodation. And then, of course, everyone thrive better in those workplaces who are more inclusive. But for us, it is essential. Like, I know that as part of Techstars, which is the accelerator I went through with Understanding Zoe, I asked for the light to be dimmed. We had like those horrible neon light, and I had migraine after only 2 or 3 hours working in that office space, potentially due to my previous burnout and the fact that I had avoided those places for 10 years. And so I asked for dimmer to be installed, for the light to be dimmed when I was in the office. And then if they want full light when I'm not there, they can do that in the open space. And a lot of the people came to me and were like, oh my gosh, it's so much nicer now with the dimmer. I'm like, yes, it's nicer for you, but for me, it was essential. This is where equity come into place, and we're all having different things. But for me, I'm very sensitive to sound, to light, to smell, to like everything is very heightened. And so for me personally, I would love to see workplaces where it's designed for all of us rather than every one of us having to ask for accommodation.
So how did your personal experiences influence the development of Understanding Zoe, and how did it actually get established?
Yes. So what happened is we were going through a phase where we had to advocate for Zoe's need literally every day, having her teacher, explaining to us at 3 p.m. every day what was happening in the classroom and how can she support better Zoe and how can we support better Zoe. And we were driving Zoe to 4 different therapists a week, and we had our own therapy, our own support and so on. But we felt like we were in a place where nothing was moving forward, where we're like either moving downwards or being stuck in the same place. And so from that, what happened is in the middle of the night, Zoe rushed in our bedroom again with another panic attack, making sure that I was alive, making sure that, I was here for her. So waking me up, shaking me. And in that moment, I had this idea of what if we were to be able to leverage all of this beautiful knowledge that everyone is sharing with us from the therapy sessions, the occupational therapy sessions, the speech therapy session, all of that, but then share those information in a safe way with her teacher, with a support worker who is coming in our home, with people who are coming in and out of Zoe's care. So this idea came from a place of stuckness, darkness, being like, oh my gosh, I'm sure there is a way out of here. What is that way forward? And I couldn't find anything like this existing in the market. So that's why I used my unique skill set and my deep interest in AI and technology since 2012 to basically create it myself. with my husband.
So could you elaborate on the mission and objectives of Understanding Zoe?
Yes. So our big mission is to close the gap that exists in this world, one children, one family at a time. So we really want to make sure that whether your child's needs are complex, you don't have to struggle as a parent, as a teacher, as an educator, as a support worker to support those children to thrive. So it's about making it easy. I shouldn't say easy, but making it easier to access the knowledge where the knowledge is and reduce this emotional, physical, psychological overload that we have as parents of neurodivergent kids, where very often one of those parents, if not both of them, are also neurodivergent. So we're really wanting to offer everyone in that community a relief.
So what were the key steps you took to transition from experiencing burnout to founding Understanding Zoe?
Oh my gosh, it was a 10-year journey, hey? It was not overnight. It was a 10-year, you know how they always say, I am an overnight success, 10 years in the making. That's exactly the story with Understanding Zoe. So I burned out in 2014, in June 2014, back in Paris in strategy consulting. And so as I said, I took 6 months off to discover myself, recover, and know what I wanted to do next. And then I jumped into being a general manager in Telstra in AI, big data, innovation, digital transformation. And through that experience, I burst a few business in AI for Telstra as new revenue stream. And then when I was finding this moment of stuckness, darkness, not knowing what to do to support Zoe better, to understand her, to answer her teacher's needs, to answer everyone in the village was asking me questions about Zoe and how to help Zoe. And I felt very disempowered as a parent because I'm supposed to know my daughter best, but I didn't know her. Because I didn't understand her properly, which now I can thanks to Understanding Zoe. I created Understanding Zoe. So I feel like Understanding Zoe is, you know how Steve Jobs, who is the founder of Apple, said, it's like you can't connect the dot forward, you have to connect them backwards. I think this has been my story with Understanding Zoe. Now it's making sense. Everything I've done in my career basically led me to that point, which is creating a legacy, an impact-driven business that is really going to change the way we support neurodivergent in the world. So I'm very grateful for having taken this leap, even though it was very scary when the idea came to me and when we started doing it for Zoe. And then we saw people asking for it as well. And then we started creating a product. And then we started having people we don't know using the app. And then, you know, it's this beautiful snowball effect that we're experimenting right now, and having corporate who are now signing with us to make it available for their employee to not have the same story as me, which is burning out and leaving the workforce, or when Zoe was really struggling at school and she was bullied during COVID, I refused a promotion in Telstra and stepped away from Telstra to run my own business, which is a case of 27% of mother of autistic kids in Australia. They leave the workplace to support their children who are in school refusal or can't group, which happened to us. So I think it's like, I want to prevent all of this from happening. I want to support those kids, and I want to weigh some weight off the shoulder of those, lift some weight off the shoulder of those mothers and those teachers and educators.
Okay, so what role did your work with Essential Shift play in your journey from burnout to creating this wonderful website, Understanding Zoe?
It's beautiful, this question, because I think Essential Shift was a step on the side to then go and do Understanding Zoe, because through Essential Shift, which was my consulting firm that I created when I stepped away from Telstra to dedicate more time to Zoe and have more flexibility, is a consulting firm where I supported a lot of tech businesses. So basically, I helped others birth their own tech business, their own startup. I helped them with strategy. I helped them with funding strategy. I helped them with developing the right product for the right market, and always in the impact-driven space. So either for sustainability or for personal empowerment or for wealth creation for those who didn't have any wealth, this kind of thing. So always in the impact space. But I think this journey as part of Essential Shift guided me to become the CEO of Understanding Zoe, because it was giving me the confidence that actually I could do it myself as well. As I was giving all of them those beautiful advice and recommendation and consulting, I could do it myself as well. I had the keys. I just needed to find the right lock for the key to open the door, and Understanding Zoe was that door.
Now, going into a little bit of tech things with Understanding Zoe, how does Understanding Zoe rather, support neurodivergent children and their families?
So Understanding Zoe is what we call an AI-powered platform. So as parents, you are the maxi user of the platform. It is designed by parents for parents. We want to give back the power to parents in the healthcare system, which hasn't been the case with many things that have been created in that space. So the parent is a meta user, and as a meta user, you sign up to use the app and you upload all of the key documentation about your child. So it can be some therapist notes, or it can be some things that you collated yourself on a Google document that you upload in the app, which may be a routine, which may be a food planning, which may be some things that you want everyone in the support village to access then through our AI coach, we call it. So as a parent, you upload all of this documentation. You are the only one accessing this documentation. It's very safely stored, and it's your individual information. This is not used for any data training. Those data will never be sold. It's really your own personal space. And then from there, you can invite people that are helping you in the care of this child. So it can be the therapist, it can be medical professional like your GP or your pediatrician. It can be support network if you have a support worker coming into your house. It can be educator and teachers. It can be extended family. And then those users can go in the app and ask a question in the moment that they need. So it can be, we've had the use cases of teacher using it to create the individualized education plan for the children. We have parents using it in a moment to prepare their kids to go to camp, for instance, or we have parents using it in a moment of acute needs to help the child navigate through a heightened emotion. So it's like different use cases are happening. We have therapists using it to prepare a session in alignment with what the kids is working on with another therapist, because they don't necessarily speak to one another. So a speech therapist asking what the kid is doing in OT, in occupational therapy, so that they can adjust the session around the same goal and the same approach. We also have these daily journals that we put in the app. So now it's a place where everyone can look at how the child is going, what are the sensitivities that the child has, and things like that. So it's really about providing this one place where everyone can offer consistent care. Everyone will react in the same way to a situation that happens with a child, so they feel understood.
Okay, so what challenges did you encounter while establishing Understanding Zoe, and how did you overcome these challenges?
One of the main challenges that we faced was actually trusting ourselves to do it, because as a parent with lived experience of neurodivergency, very often you're told that you're not the right person to do this, or, you know, your way of thinking is divergent. And so it may not work out. So it was really about trusting ourselves and also stopping the internal chatter around, I am not a psychologist. I am not an expert in that field. Because yes, I am not a healthcare professional, but I work with them, and we are building partnership with many of them to make sure that we are doing it in the right way for them, but we are coming from the angle of the lived experience as parents. So we turn this challenge as actually an opportunity, as something that is making us even stronger, which is coming from this lived experience of so many people told us there is something wrong with your child, when actually we are taking the opposite way, which is there is nothing wrong with my child. I am trying to understand them better, which give us now this competitive edge. But it was a big challenge for us, like accepting to do this business when we felt we were not the expert to do this business, which we actually are if we look at the tech and the lived experience and all of this kind of thing. But for a long time, we had this internal murmur around, this is something you are going to fail doing, because we've been told that for quite some time as neurodivergent, that we are not good enough, or we don't know how this works, or we are clumsy, or we are like whatever you've been told. I've been told so many things personally that it took a lot of self-confidence and self-advocacy to do it.
Okay, so in what ways does Understanding Zoe differentiate itself from other platforms supporting neurodivergent individuals?
So if you've seen any platform like this, Michael, or anyone, I'll be keen for you guys to let me know which one you've seen, because I haven't, I've spent a lot of time looking for competition and I haven't found anyone playing in our space. So that's why I ended up creating it, because believe me, I was not planning on creating another business and going all in with Understanding Zoe. I resisted it for quite some time. So if I went all in and I created it, it's because it's sitting in a place where no one else is doing what we're doing. So you have platforms which exist, which are specific to occupational therapy, to help you enhance what's happening in the occupational therapy at home. Or you have an app which exists, which is for speech therapy, to help autistic kids practice their speech therapy outside of the speech therapy. But we haven't seen any app which was really bringing the village together and helping everyone, offering this consistency of care for the child and for the whole community to be on the same page. So that's what makes it unique. It's actually, there is nothing. And I looked in the US, in the UK, in France, in Australia. I couldn't find anything like this. So we had to build it. And let me tell you, for a long time, I would have preferred not to do it, because it takes a lot of sweat and tears and effort to build a tech business in that space. But I'm very grateful we did it, because the feedback we received, and we filmed a video for our demo day in Textile where I asked a few beta users to jump on a call and share their feedback about the platform. And the feedback we hear from our beta user are just moving me deeply. And I will keep doing this for as long as I can stand.
So how do you envision the future of Understanding Zoe in terms of its impact on the neurodivergent community? And is there an app coming out on Android and also the iPhone as well? Because it's currently it's only available via the web at the moment, but
yeah, it's a web app.
I'm hoping there's going to be sort of like an app on the iPhone and Google Play Store as well. So is that in development?
Yes. So thank you for asking this question. So the big vision we have is actually offering this to every neurodivergent. So we started with kids, but we would love to then expand it to anyone who would like to use the app, whether you're an adult or a teenager or a young kid. We started with kids because this is where we are right now as parents, parenting an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old who are neurodivergent. But we know that there is need also in the teenager phase, in the 20-year-old space, in the adult phase, for everyone to feel understood. So that the big vision, like really closing that gaps that exist for the 20% of us who are hidden, who are misunderstood, who are not valued, who, need to advocate every single day and need to find ally. And this is so tiring that we want this app to be able to just do that for us. So we don't have to always say, hey, can you dim the light, please? Now people know about that and they do it because they know you and they know your need and they know that you need the light dim. When I say you, it's myself. So that's a big vision. In terms of the development, we're definitely looking at developing a native Android and a native Apple app. Right now, it is a web app because it's easier to test the feature, gather feedback, and have the use cases validated rather than being on a native app, which will be harder to change feature and so on. So that's why right now we are on a web app. So when people give us feedback, when a beta user is telling us, this is not easy to find, or I'd love to have, this feature embedded and so on, it's actually faster to iterate on a web app rather than having two apps that you need to maintain. But we will definitely move into a native app as soon as we have crystallized what is the core value proposition of Understanding Zoe and what people truly want and how they truly use it.
Okay, and last question. We actually sort of usually ask if there's one piece of advice in 30 seconds or less, what would that be? But I'm going to sort of tinker around with that a little bit, and we need a longer answer on this one. But what advice would you offer to individuals facing burnout, especially those who are neurodivergent, based on your personal journey and professional insights?
Wow. That's a deep question. So I'd say from my lived experience, I would encourage them to reach out to a group of people that can support them and check in with them, because the worst things that can happen when you're neurodivergent and you're going through burnout is going through isolation at the same time, which will lead to deeper depression, which will lead to an even darker deep. Does that make sense? So I would love to invite them to reach out and create around them a group of people who can check in with them regularly and making sure that you have those daily regular check-in with at least one person who is making sure that you are okay, because it can be very, very dark. So that's where I would love for any of you, if you're experiencing burnout or if you go one day through burnout, to have this little ounce of energy to actually create this WhatsApp group, or create this whatever group it is, if it's on WhatsApp, if it's on, your Messenger app, whatever it is, but just creating that group with 2 to 3 to 5 people that you trust, that have your back and will be here to check in on you.
And on that note, Laetitia Andrac, thank you very much for being part of the Deep Dive podcast today.
Thank you, Michael, for having me.
To register your interest in Understanding Zoe, go to www.understandingzoe.com or check out the Instagram at understanding.zoe. To find out more about Laetitia, go to www.essentialshift.co or her Instagram page at essential.shift.